Welcome back to the show. Every week on Power of Attorney, we ask our viewers to send legal questions about the next show's topic. You guys have done a great job, as always, of sending in questions to us on Twitter, Facebook, by email. So let's get to your questions about legal assistance right now. The first question we have says, what is the threshold for getting assistance from Southeast Louisiana Legal Services?
Well, the basic threshold is 125% of poverty, which is roughly $24,000 a year for a family of 3.
So it's $24,000 poverty, and it's 125% above that?
No, that's actually the 125% figure. Now, we do have some discretion to go up to 200% of poverty, which is actually the real measure of poverty in America today. When you talk about the poverty standard, the 100% poverty standard is not real anymore. The reality is 200% of poverty is real poverty in America when you adjust in all the new expenses of living.
Let's follow up on that. That's $24,000 for a one-person household?
No, 3-person household.
Really?
Yes,
wow.
And then some, as I said earlier, some of our programs don't have income limits, or they have different income limits. For example, our low-income taxpayer clinic, which, by the way, is a statewide program, not just a Southeast program.
Oh, great.
The threshold there is 250% of poverty, which is about $48,000 for a family of 3.
All right, so if you make $24,000 in your household or less, and there's 3 people in the household, you're going to qualify for pretty much any of the categories.
Any of our services.
If you have 4 or 5 people in the household, 2 parents or a spouse or 2 significant others and children, the number can be higher because it's more than 3 people.
Right. The number goes up higher depending on how many people are in the family, and it goes lower if you have fewer people. But your average family that gets legal aid is usually about a 3-person family these days.
And you said you have some discretion. In other words, if their numbers are higher than that, you might be able to say, well, that's close enough, we're going to offer you our legal services.
Right. If somebody has a really high priority legal aid problem where they're going to lose a home or they're going to be subject to serious family violence, then we can look at their overall family expenses and possibly qualify them under the 200% poverty guideline.
Right. 200% meaning 48,000.
Yeah, a little, maybe like, I'd be under 48.
Okay.
But it'd be...
All right, because 24 is 125%.
Right,
so
right. So it'd be in the
40,
low 40s or high 30s.
Okay.
So you can't, it's always difficult to tell whether you qualify, and we certainly encourage people to give us a call, because we have eligibility people who can go through all the rules and determine whether you're eligible.
No charge to be evaluated, right, to see if you qualify.
Right, and there's no charge for the services either. Our services are completely free if we accept you.
That's wonderful. Now, you brought up something very important. If there is a domestic abuse situation, and that can be one spouse abusing the other, or one boyfriend abusing girlfriend, or girlfriend abusing boyfriend, or a child that maybe one parent is worried has been abused by another family member, and legal assistance is needed, that's a different financial equation?
Well, that one we'd usually look. We generally try to apply the 200% poverty, but we do bend the rules on occasion if it's a really compelling case.
Very good.
We've had doctors and lawyers call us for help, believe it or not, who are victims of domestic violence. Now, we normally wouldn't do full representation for them because they're quite wealthy, but the thing that's always startled me is these are very well-established professionals, and the nature of the domestic violence is just so traumatic even on people like that.
Yeah. Well, the moral of the story is domestic violence is not a class-sensitive topic. It affects anybody.
It affects everybody. It affects all of society.
Correct. Well, let's move on to the next question, because we got a lot to cover still. Well, actually, one thing I wanted to mention, we talked about it on the break. Southeast Louisiana Legal Services does not handle criminal matters, but one thing that we can tell everybody, if you don't already know this, is if you have a criminal charge pending against you, if you cannot afford a lawyer, the state is obligated to provide you legal counsel. So it's not like people who have criminal charges pending against them have nowhere to go. Also, Loyola Law Clinic, Loyola Law School has a law clinic, Tulane has a law clinic, which does provide some legal representation for criminal matters. You just need to get in touch with those guys, and we'll put some contact information, if we don't already have it, on the show website.
Now, we do have, we are able to help people who have criminal history records with the collateral consequences of those records. For example, an expungement of the arrest record so they could get a job, or action. There are a lot of occupations that have licensing requirements, and sometimes if you've got a criminal record, that's going to affect your ability to get licensed after you graduate. We just had a really interesting case of a cab driver who had his license permanently revoked because of a criminal record that was more than 30 years old.
Unbelievable.
Right, and the judge ruled in our client's favor basically because he said those particular crimes had no relationship to his ability and fitness to be a cab driver, which he had been for many years.
Right.
So that was an economic, obviously a serious economic problem for that guy, and if we hadn't been able to resolve it, he would have lost his livelihood.
Well, what a wonderful service. And you know, we actually did a show on power of attorney, and you can see all our episodes on our show website, on expungements. And one more good story, the United States Supreme Court just a few weeks ago decided a case where somebody pled guilty to a crime where they knew they could expunge it later, except the federal government said they're going to deport this man who came here when he was 3 years old from Jamaica. He had 5 kids, all legal U.S. citizens, and he pled guilty to having several marijuana cigarettes worth of marijuana. In Oklahoma, that was intent to distribute. The U.S. Supreme Court said, you're not deporting this man. He had been deported, but they allowed him to come home. They said, that's not gonna fly. And Sotomayor, the Hispanic U.S. Supreme Court justice, wrote the opinion that changed the interpretation of the law. And fantastic, because that would have been a gross miscarriage of justice, in my opinion. But moving right along, very important. This is an amazing additional service to the community. I want to show everybody this book. This is a book that you have been one of the lead, if not at the lead, of the helm in providing. It's called Louisiana Legal Services and Pro Bono Desk Manual. It's actually full of so much information about all these different areas of law that you assist people in. And what's amazing to me is it's free. It's free online for anybody to look through there and try and empower yourselves, like we do on the show, about what your rights are in all these different areas of law. Now, if you go to the John Redmann Power of Attorney website, we'll provide you a link so you can go straight to this book. No strings attached. Operators are not standing by. Just go to the Power of Attorney website and you can actually see this book. You may be able to download it as a PDF, but either which way, you bookmark that page on the internet and you'll be able to see all these different categories of law we've talked about. Tell us more about this book. Tell us what else can people do with this book. What is the book? How is the book? Tell us more of the story of this book.
Yeah, we've been writing the book since about 1984. This is the 5th edition, and it gets better every year. And our primary goal is to educate legal aid and pro bono attorneys in the basics of poverty law and how to better help their clients. That's one of the services we do besides just helping people in their cases. So it's roughly 1,000 pages long. It covers 15 major subjects of the law. And we have people who are not lawyers have read the book because it's generally put online and have told us it helps them resolve their problems on their own.
Right. It's
obviously, you want to get a lawyer
Right.
you
In other
can,
words, we're not saying read this book and suddenly you don't need a lawyer to handle your complicated
Right.
issues. Please don't misunderstand what we're saying. But this is very useful and helpful information and may help you understand better where you are likely to stand. But if there's a serious legal issue, don't be foolish and try and represent yourself if you're not a lawyer experienced in these areas.
Yeah, unfortunately, in today's society, because of the lack of funding for civil legal aid, a lot of people do end up having to represent themselves, and that can be very difficult. But there are some chapters in this book, particularly the landlord-tenant chapter and the family law chapters, that if you read it, or if you have a high school education, you're going to be able to understand a lot of the concepts. We obviously always recommend that you get a lawyer if you can, but we know the economic reality in today's America is that most people can't get a legal aid or pro bono attorney.
And some people are in that category where they make a little too much money to get your services
right,
for free,
the modest means
and they can't
persons.
pay what a lot of these lawyers charge by the hour want. We got time for one more question, very short on time. I heard that the Southeast Louisiana Legal Services budget has been slashed, and how has that affected what you're able to do, and what can people who wish to contribute, what can people who are concerned do to help?
Well, we are facing one of the greatest financial crises in our 45-year history, basically because of the sequester in Congress. We get about half of our funding from the Legal Services Corporation, and that money's been reduced because of the sequester and also because of the census adjustments. What's happened in America over the last 10 years is there have been monster increases in poverty nationwide. So what Congress does is they've got a certain amount that they allocate for civil legal aid, and they divide that up based on census adjustment. And in a lot of states, poverty has skyrocketed. And so Louisiana's
share... What can people do? Can they contribute money?
Yeah,
we're a tax-free donation?
We're a nonprofit charity, and we do welcome charitable donations, which are tax deductible.
People can volunteer to assist in your offices?
Especially lawyers help out volunteering.
We're going to put that information on our website as well.
Yeah, it's going to affect the level of services that we can offer.
Well, listen, I hate to cut you off, but this episode, we're all out of time. That's all the time we have for this show, but we're going to do one more episode. Thanks so much for being with us. We look forward to being with all of you on our next episode. We're going to go into more detail on these topics. Thank you so much, Mark Moreau, for being with us, and we look forward to having you, come back again and talk about some of these specific areas of the law. Thank you so much.
Sure.
That's all the time we have. Thanks for being with us.